The phone rang at 4:17 a.m., vibrating sharply on the nightstand. It was one of those calls where your body reacts before your mind can catch up. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. I knew something had changed, though I didn't yet understand how. I answered without greeting. "Ma'am," said the voice, calm but professional, "this is Deputy Collins with the County Sheriff's Office. There's been a traffic collision involving your husband." Traffic collision. Not crash. Not accident. Carefully chosen words, meant to frame something unimaginable in neutral terms. He continued. "He told me where, he told me when, and he told me he didn't survive. He said it appeared to be accidental. He did not tell me why he was there, or how it came to be. By the time I arrived at Old Quarry Pass, the first pale light of dawn was spilling across the hills. Patrol vehicles lined the shoulder. Deputies whispered to one another, hands in their pockets. Below, a tow crew worked quietly to remove what remained of Daniel's car from the ravine. From above, it looked small, almost obedient, folded in on itself. The kind of quiet collapse that leaves no dramatic evidence, just silence. A man standing near me shook his head. "Brake failure," he said. "They say it happens fast on curves like this." I nodded, but that nod was automatic. Daniel didn't do things fast. He didn't take risks. He never miscalculated. Daniel had memorized every route he drove for years. He checked tire pressure, brakes, fluid levels. He avoided shortcuts and roads that made him uncomfortable. He did not take scenic routes. He did not gamble. And he never, under any circumstances, drove Old Quarry Pass at midnight. I mentioned this to Deputy Collins when he took my statement. He nodded with a practiced patience. "People do things out of character sometimes, especially late at night," he said. It sounded reasonable. That was what made it convincing. The sheriff's office report came back clean. Brake system failure. Loss of control. No signs of impairment. No other vehicles involved. A fatal accident. Case closed. Daniel had serviced his car 2 weeks before he died. Grief made me doubt my instincts. I told myself I was reading too much into it, that sometimes machines fail, that careful people can still be victims. But memory is stubborn, and it began to replay itself with cruel accuracy. The night before he died, Daniel barely touched his dinner. He pushed food across the plate, distracted, silent. "Long day?" I asked. "Something like that," he said. Later, he stood at the kitchen sink with the water running long after his hands were clean, staring at his reflection. Not vanity. Assessment. Focus. Memorizing something he didn't yet understand. Before bed, he checked his phone again. Then again. "Are you waiting for someone?" I asked. "No," he said too quickly. Daniel was a bad liar. His voice flattened slightly when he tried to lie, the subtle shift only noticeable to those who loved him. He kissed me goodnight, holding on longer than usual. "If I'm late tomorrow, don't worry," he said. He was never late. The funeral moved with efficiency. Chairs lined in rows. People's voices lowered as they shared the same phrases over and over. It was so sudden. Poor Daniel. At least it was quick. One man stayed at the edge of the parking lot. Not grieving. Not consoling anyone. Just watching. I recognized him immediately. Weeks earlier, Daniel had shown me a photo on his phone. A man in a hard hat, smiling beside a partially built overpass. "If you ever meet this guy," Daniel had said casually, "don't tell him anything about me." I laughed at the time. Why would I? He didn't answer. The man at the funeral was older than in the photo, but unmistakable. Frank Ramsey. It took 8 days before I could bring myself to open Daniel's home office. Everything was as he had left it. Desk cleared. Files aligned. Laptop centered. Charging cable wrapped perfectly beside it. No clutter. No signs of distraction. No evidence of struggle. The laptop was locked. None of the passwords I knew worked. In the bottom drawer, beneath neatly labeled folders, I found a thin, unmarked notebook. The first page read, "If this looks like an accident, it wasn't." The following pages weren't emotional. No confessions. No trembling fears. Just dates. Times. License plates. Observations, written like a case log. Daniel had been followed. More than once. The same vehicle at different locations. Silent phone calls late at night. Notes about his brakes feeling soft. Reminders about scheduled maintenance. Every detail recorded. Every potential threat documented. The final entry was 3 days before his death. Meeting confirmed. If I'm wrong, nothing happens. If I'm right, this ends badly. When I brought the notebook to the sheriff's office, they listened politely. One investigator said, "It's common for spouses to try to find patterns after a tragedy." I mentioned Frank Ramsey. A pause. A glance exchanged. "Mr. Ramsey is a licensed contractor," the deputy said. "We have no evidence linking him to this incident." The file was closed. I began retracing Daniel's final week on my own. Phone records showed brief calls from blocked numbers, emails written late at night, coded messages. One email, sent the night before his death, stopped me cold. "You were right. I have proof. I'll bring everything tomorrow." The recipient address no longer existed. Old Quarry Pass looked ordinary in daylight. The curve where Daniel's car left the road was sharp, but manageable. The guardrail had been recently replaced. Fresh bolts. Smooth metal. Loose gravel collected near the pavement's edge. Enough to destabilize a tire. Enough to make a difference if the brakes failed. The mechanic who serviced Daniel's car hesitated when I asked about the brakes. "They weren't new," he said, "but they were functional." "Could someone have tampered with them?" I asked. He looked away. "Someone who knew what they were doing could." A woman named Emily contacted me weeks later. She had worked with Daniel on a consulting project. "He was looking into infrastructure claims," she said quietly. "Accidents tied to the same companies. Insurance payouts. No criminal findings." She slid documents across the table. Frank Ramsey's name appeared repeatedly. Road failures. Equipment malfunctions. Fatal incidents officially blamed on mechanical error. Daniel had noticed the pattern. He'd started asking questions. The final confirmation came from a secondary GPS tracker Daniel had installed himself, independent of the car's system. The data showed his car stopped on Old Quarry Pass before the crash. 4 minutes. 4 minutes missing from the official report. I sent everything to a journalist anonymously. Not the full story. Just enough to force investigation. The article didn't mention Daniel. It highlighted systemic oversight failures. How accidents can erase accountability. How systems protect themselves. Frank Ramsey's name appeared once. Briefly. Audits followed. Contracts suspended. Companies quietly shut down. Frank Ramsey left the country for medical reasons. Daniel's death remains officially classified as an accident. Sometimes I drive past that road. It's safer now. Better marked. Reinforced. They call it progress. I don't call it anything. The phone still rings at 4:17 in my memory. The words still land the same way. Daniel knew how it would end. Not with justice. Not with closure. Just a story that sounds reasonable. And that is the part that stays with you.